Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah, it's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
Oh, how I do love barbershop. John Combest, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Brad. Happy Friday.
Yes, the last Friday of May. Matter of fact, the last working day for a lot of people in May, so we'll just have to see what happens throughout the day. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. What do we do first, John? What do we do first on Friday?
Do we bring in some ethnic people?
We bring in the polka singers.
Time for the John Combest Top 3.
Here's what John Combest does every day for the last 30 years. 23 years, 24 years, what is it, 24 years?
No, whatever. I think it's 23 and change.
23 and change. John puts together this incredible website every single day of his life, and he never misses a specific day. Not one day, but he does. We do have a conflict about the fact that I have to pull the tape that John says he never puts any government sites on there, but then again, in another subsequent episode, he says he does, but we'll let that go
I did, and I'm going to interrupt you, Brad, as I should, because the day after the elections, I linked to the Missouri Secretary of State website, as I've mentioned many times, the day after the election, so folks can see the election results. Thank you, Brad.
You do link to government websites. Okay. Having said that, what we do is we start the show off with this guy right here. We bring him in the studio, and we prop him up, and we say, Casey, it's your turn to talk. And first off, identify yourself.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what do you do?
Now on with the countdown.
And what else do you do?
And here they are.
And what else do you do?
Their stories coming up.
And what else do you do?
We're on our way to the number one. In third place,
Brad, story number 3 brings you a bad piece of news for your pocketbook. And while I describe why it's bad news for you, Brad, if you would do me a favor and do one of your best skills, which is get Urban Dictionary ready to look something up.
Okay.
Can you do that while I talk?
I will do it right now. I will type in Urban Dictionary.
Here's the piece of bad news. Excuse me. Here's the piece of bad news, Brad. After 45 years, St. Louis PrideFest, that's right, a collection of gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, other alphabet groups, is instituting a cover fee to go to their big party next month called PrideFest. Brad, you're going to have to pay $10 to go inside PrideFest. And not only are you going to have to pay to get in there, Brad, but the entire area is going to be partitioned off by a 6-foot fence. Now, that's not to keep people out or to keep people from sneaking in for free. That's for the protection of the LGBTQIA community, Brad. This story is brought to us by St. Louis Public Radio, specifically a gentleman named Brian Munoz. Brian Munoz covers this, and he has some quotes from, the organizers of this who were very disappointed in the fact that they're going to have to start sticking people for a $10 bill or a $10 Venmo when they come in. Brad, besides Donald Trump, who's just kind of overall a boogeyman character, who do you think is to blame for this cover charge?
Well, is the Pride Fest in the city or the county? It's in the city, correct?
The city.
It's in the city. Who's to blame?
Who's to blame, Brad?
Vervis Jones.
Not Vervis Jones, surprisingly. You would think that maybe he would run a stalking horse campaign of another festival at the exact same time to draw people away. But you'd be wrong, Brad. Actually, the people that are to blame are Anheuser-Busch,
Oh.
Smirnoff vodka. There were a lot of corporate sponsors that have pulled out, pardon the expression, and made a mess, pardon the expression. And the folks who put together PrideFest say, look, we just can't do it anymore because these corporate people have pulled out. And so, they go through the whole thing of like, we understand that politics makes people make decisions, but come on, guys. So this piece by Munoz details like what's going to happen down there. They have the gay guy that's like, hey, the fence is there. Here's what he says. That fencing is not a barrier against us. It's to protect us. We just have to make sure we keep our community safe. And you'll remember, Brad, I think it was 2 years ago, there was some sort of a stabbing or some sort of I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was some sort of a stabbing after one of the PrideFest nights. Now, to be fair to the LGBTQIA alphabet community, it's in St. Louis City. So you're going to expect a certain amount of savagery and uncivilized behavior. You cannot blame the gay community for urban savagery. That's going to happen whether there's a gay festival or a gay party or drunk people stumbling around being gay and drunk, whatever. Like violence is going to happen. So you can't blame the gay community for that. But so instead of saying, hey, we're putting up a fence so that people can't sneak in and out whenever they want to, they're saying that it's for the protection of the community. Now, Brad, you have Urban Dictionary ready to go, right?
Yeah, and by the way, the phrase of the day, if I can just read this, is sure, Jan. Are you ready for this?
Oh, yeah. Sure, Jan.
Sure, Jan is used when you can easily read a family or friend for the filthy liar they are. You say it when you obviously know they are lying, but you don't want to call them out in front of everyone. Phrase originated from a very Brady sequel. Marcia, that's funny. I've never heard of a George Glass at our skull. Jan, that's because he's a transfer student. He came in last week of school. He's really good looking and thinks I'm really cool. Marcia, sure, Jan.
I didn't know that Urban Dictionary had a phrase of the day. I thought you were saying sure, Jan.
No.
About the fact that the gay guy said that the fence is there to protect the community, not to keep, freeloaders out.
When you go to Urban Dictionary and you just go to the homepage, it gives you like the phrase or the word of the day. That's what the deal is.
Oh,
okay.
Nice. Okay, here's the phrase I want you to use.
Okay.
Will you look up the word zesty?
Zesty.
T-Y.
Okay.
And I'm having you look it up because a reliable source who's generally pretty good about this stuff told me that zesty is the Gen Alpha term for gay. So if instead of saying somebody is acting a little light in their loafers, you say, oh yeah, that guy, I think he's a little zesty.
Zesty, meaning you look snazzy and gay. That's number one.
Snazzy and gay. You don't just look gay, you look snazzy and gay.
That's definition number one. Number two is gay or sus. Number three is looking like James Charles. Who is James Charles?
I have no idea who that is.
Number four, the way my advisor describes someone who looks and dresses like they could be gay or homosexual. Number five, zesty is the definition of someone that appears juicy and flamboyantly homosexual. Number six.
Okay, let's not put juicy and homosexual in the same sentence ever.
Number six. This is interesting. It has multiple definitions of number six. Number one, fun, active, and sexy. Number two, an energetic outlook on life. Number three, good, clean fun. That's obviously some person that doesn't know what they're talking about. Number four is cool. That painting is quite zesty. That's all there is. Well, there's a bunch more, but I won't go. But
okay, but those seem to be the main ones. Okay, well, so you know what, Brad? I purposefully did not look it up because I wanted to hear it from you. So it appears as though my source is correct. And zesty actually means gay. And not to be confused with the old Zest soap commercials of you're not fully clean unless you're zestfully clean.
Well, you know what? I just got a text from someone who I won't identify. And they said, zesty, that's the euphemism for being white.
Oh, wow. Is that right? Well, in that case, then I love me some zesty women. I don't want anything that's non-zesty, Brad. You get what I'm saying?
I hear you. Okay, my comment on this, see, this is interesting because I've heard this exact same story on NPR from a couple of different cities, and it's the same thing. Matter of fact, I heard the Gay Pride event in Minneapolis, and they're mad at Target because Target has pulled back their sponsorship, and there was somebody else that pulled back their sponsorship. You know, You know what? I heard somebody say something the other day, and I know this is like one of these things. You hear this, you go like, wow, that's sort of heavy. They said, and this is on another radio show, they said, think about this for a minute. We give the soldiers, the airmen, the seamen who gave up their lives for a country one day in Memorial Day, and we give the gay people a whole month. And I thought to myself, you know what? There's something to say about that. Why don't we have Gay Pride Day? Why is it a whole month?
Yeah, well, and so for folks who sometimes follow along on the transcript, you're spelling that SEAMEN, correct?
Yeah.
You're saying we should give a whole month for seamen. Brad, you know who's not getting a lot of semen? Some of the guys in story number 2.
Okay, here we go.
Up a notch to number 2.
I don't know where your mind goes sometimes, Brad. A few stories came out of Jefferson City yesterday. I'll point folks to the Whispering Gallery, put together by Jake Crozen and Scott Fawn, today's edition of that. We also have Rudy Keller and Hancock at the at Missouri Independent, that progressive blog over there, and then a Missouri Net piece, because something unexpected happened yesterday in Jeff City. And usually when the legislature passes bills, there's a little bit of a ceremonial piece where leaders of the legislature have to actually finally sign the bills before they're sent to the governor, right? It's a boring little administrative piece and nobody ever really cares. But yesterday, in this ceremonial, which should have been just a boring ceremonial procedural effort, Democrats raised their hand and said, no. According to Senate rules, you guys have to have a quorum here before you do anything. And the gentleman who really led the charge for the Democrats is a guy named Stephen Weber. And he's a longtime proud Democrat from Columbia, Missouri, a legitimate war hero. He's one of those guys that doesn't brag about it a lot, but he's a legitimate war hero. And he made the note of, hey, actually, we don't have a quorum here. Where is your quorum, Senate Leader O'Laughlin? So what happened yesterday, Brad, in short, Democrats warned at the end of session that things would no longer go smoothly. Some members of the Missouri Senate that were Republicans pushed what's known as the PQ, moving the previous question, as we've talked about before on that show, that really breaks longstanding decorum. It's essentially telling Democrats to sit down and shut up. We don't want to hear from you. Stephen Weber and the Senate's leader, a gentleman named Doug Beck, said, you guys pull this stuff and don't expect any cooperation from us going forward, period. And it looks like yesterday, Brad, Stephen Weber and Doug Beck and some other Democrats who were there yesterday, but mostly Weber and Beck, followed through on their promise. And they say, hey, if you want to follow the rules, you better get your members to get their you-know-what up here. And then maybe you guys can have a vote, and then maybe we can do this procedural move. So what happened yesterday, Brad, is Senator Cindy O'Laughlin made a motion. And so the Senate essentially adjourned yesterday, and members are going to have to come back to Jeff City today so that they can vote on the procedural move to have the bill signed, to send the bills to the governor, to have the governor sign the bills. So I guess you could just say, Brad, that Missouri Democrats are following through on some of their threats.
John, this is what makes government so dysfunctional. This is when, if you're an outsider like myself, you look at this and you go like, okay, what a bunch of jerks.
That it seems like a bunch of partisan bickering is what you're saying.
Yes, I mean, come on, move on down the road. If at this point, you're not a public servant, as they like to call themselves. You're a public hemorrhoid. How about that?
Wow, Brad, that's a bit of a appendage-like comment for 7:14 a.m. I would say, just to play devil's advocate, Brad, I would say if you're Cindy O'Laughlin, or you're a member of the Republican majority, and Democrats have told you, hey, we're going to get in the way of everything you possibly try to do, I think you got to take every step to assume that they're going to be serious about it and just assume the worst.
You know who we need in times like this?
I would say Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman.
No.
I know who we need. Listen, was he a big PCP head who got famous in 1991 for speeding and doing PCP?
Here's who we need.
want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
We need Rodney King. We need
Rodney King. And then you know
Rodney
what?
King.
I think for you $6 worth of PCP, you could have got him to say anything. Now he's left us, right?
Yes. He
Okay,
I
well,
think
rest in peace to Rodney.
I think he drowned
He's
in
at
a
the
swim
big
pool.
PCP pipe
Now,
up in the sky.
I do have. Now, it's funny you should mention Mary Elizabeth Coleman because I don't know if I told you this or not. I ran into her in person the other day.
Oh, yeah. Where were you, Brad?
I did. I ran into her in person. And I go,
Yeah, I know
hey,
you went up at
what's that?
ridiculous lawnmower trips.
No. I was actually in a parking lot at Deerberg's eating my ice cream. And
yeah.
I said,
Did she ask you for some campaign contributions?
no, I said, hey, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, we talk about you all the time on the Brad and John show. And I go, anything to say to me? And she says, she looks right at me and she smiled. She says,
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
that's what she said to me.
I don't even know where to begin with all the things that have been said that are just wrong here.
What was that, John? What did you say again?
Are you going to hit play?
I don't even know where to start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
That's what she says. That's what
we're on borrowed time with Mary Elizabeth because next year is her last year in the Missouri legislature.
That's what she said to you. To me, she said,
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Hey, you know who's got two big brains? The leads in story number one.
The number one.
A headline from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. A gentleman who once interviewed the great Brad Hildebrand. A guy named Dan Caesar of the Post-Dispatch has a headline that I think deserves number one today, in homage to Brad's constant cheerleading, touting, rooting for local media. The headline is, KFNS's glorious, then volatile long run in sports talk radio ends this weekend. The good news and the silver lining is that St. Louis may be losing KFNS radio, but St. Louis is gaining a brand new local talk station, KLIS Radio. It's run by a guy named Dave Green, who's a longtime St. Louis radio veteran, a gentleman named Conrad Thompson, who really came to national prominence by hosting wrestling podcasts. Doot, doot, doot. That's an insider reference there for you, Brad. Anyway, KLIS debuts Sunday morning, a brand new talk station. You say, John, you've talked about this before, and you said that Dave Green says they're not talking about politics. Why are you talking about it on the Brad and John show? This is supposed to be the top three. Well, you're right. But Dave Green says, although there will be no political talk shows, they will be talking about major cultural things, occasional big news things, things of that nature, Brad. So eventually, they will probably be talking about big things that happen, and we'll probably talk about what's going on their station and the things that they're talking about. He had a great quote here, Brad, when he talks a little bit about, first of all, I have a link up to this, and as usual, I have a paywall-free version. The KLIS model, Dave Green expects the people that host his show. Dave actually takes sales and marketing seriously. So he wants to sell advertising. He wants to do things to invest in the station, to advertise in the station. He says his content creators are going to be a key part of the actual business piece. And also he talks about the fact that, you're not just going to have a linear radio station. He says if you use YouTube and Google correctly, then you are going to reach a lot more people. So this is great news, I think, for anybody who loves local radio. Brad, again, you were a constant and sincere cheerleader for this. My other favorite quote from Dave Green in this is he says, when he's explaining why you're not going to get political shows on his station, he says, there's plenty of places to get political talk. And my whole concept is that, nobody wants them to listen to the same thing over and over and over again. So Dave Green, I think he's right about that. And I love the fact that he's actually, Brad, I know that you used to hate McRadio. Now you're, by actions, pretty much a advocate of McRadio. But KLIS is going to have actual multiple local programming on every single day.
No, I think Dave Green, in full disclosure, I tried to buy KFNS and I dealt with Dave Green and I was sad at one point in time. This is probably the reason I stepped in. Dave Green literally had the radio station for sale, the transmitter site for sale, as a real estate investment. He essentially was saying, hey, you can take down the towers and crunch the transmitter building. It's a small building over there. It's up in Madison County off of 255. And you can tear the towers down, take down the transmitter building, and build a subdivision here. And he was serious. And that's when I stepped in. I hate to see this. And quite honestly, I even said to him at one point, I go, Dave, you're a smart guy. Why don't you run the station? Why don't you buy it? Which he ultimately did. I wish him the best. I hope he does well. I really do. And matter of fact, John and Dan Caesar is a great guy. He's a great columnist. And
but promote your dodgy link that I'm not going to open because it's probably some ChatGPT crap.
I beat Dan by a couple days. I have reinstated my column, my website called Radio Poop. Poop.
Brad, how many days will you do this before you forget about it again?
Radiopoop.com. Radiopoop.com is up and running. And I have a story on there about this very thing if you want to take a look at it.
Brad, will you answer a direct question for me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not clicking on this because any link that you have is completely dodgy and unreliable. Is this something you wrote with ChatGPT?
Well, this is not by me. I've now hired a writer who writes some of the stuff on.
Okay, so it's ChatGPT. For folks who missed it last week, Brad has employed last week ChatGPT to do thumbnails for YouTube, and they came out saying the Brad and Bron John show. Another one said the Brad and John show. And I sent Brad a text that said, do you read these before you post them? And of course, because I already knew the answer, Brad did not reply. But Brad, I look forward to not reading your ChatGPT story on your defecation joke website.
Well, no. I still write some of the stories, but this one is written by Art Intelligentsia. And that's
okay, that's funny. That's actually very
that's
so ChatGPT. Now, Brad, most of the ChatGPT stuff you've done before doesn't give any credit to the sources and essentially just plagiarizes legitimate news sources. I'm sure you went back through and made sure that all the facts were correct, and you reread it just like you did the Brad and Bron John show, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Good. I want to make sure that I know that your level of quality, you care so much about being accurate that I'm sure you went back and read it.
Right. And here, to give you first paragraph. In a surprise move that's shaking up the local radio landscape, longtime St. Louis sports station, KFNS 590 AM, is rebranding as KLIS. A bold reimagining intended to modernize its image and expand its reach beyond traditional sports talk show.
If that is not ChatGPT, word salad, and generic garbage, I don't know what is.
Effective immediately, listeners will notice new imaging, a new lineup, and a refreshed sound under the KLIS call letters, which management says...
What kind of a human says we'll notice new imaging? So obviously a human would say a new logo, a new branding, but because you rely on ChatGPT and don't read it back, it's going to say imaging and you're going to think that it's correct. It's
a radio talk. Remember, this is radiopoop.com. It's a radio talk, which management says represents a shift toward a more dynamic mix of content while still retaining the station's sports heritage. And this is what's interesting. This isn't just a name change, said General Manager Mike Sanders, who I don't think even exists, but that's a whole other story.
God, that's terrible.
KLIX, I can't even say it. KLIS marks a clean break from the drama instability that plagued KFNS in the past. We're building something stronger, local, intelligent, and St. Louis through and through. That is Mike Sanders. Man, he knows the business. Okay.
Yeah, and he totally exists.
Okay. It's
unbelievable, Brad.
It's time for... And by the way, I have to tell you this. In the C block, I have Bob Frischman. I contacted him yesterday, and he's the guy that was one of my students in my class at Flow Valley in 1979, and I contacted him, and he's agreed to come on the show, John.
Will you please tell Bob Frischman that John Comba said hello? I know Bob Frischman.
You do know him?
Okay, so ask him in C block.
How do you know him?
I'm not going to tell you. You got to ask him in C block.
Did I mention the name yesterday? Did I say the name?
No, you didn't. That's the first time you said it.
Bob, because he's agreed to come on the show. Okay.
I am not convinced that you are not the biological father of Bob Frischman. Now that you mention Bob Frischman, if you put Brad Hildebrand in a cloning machine and you made him, 20 years younger, and you shave 20 pounds of gut off, you would get Bob Frischman.
Okay.
And you gave him a working hip and an eyeball, you'd have Bob Frischman.
Boy, John, you're so complimentary. Okay, we have to take a break. And by the way, before I do this, can I tell you something? And I don't mean, I hate it when radio people say, this is a great radio station. We really have a great station. We have a great staff.
But why is it a great radio station, Brad?
No, I'm saying that's what other radio people say.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What you and I have is this is like, and some people are going to groan when I say this, this is like the Rush Limbaugh formula. Because if you remember, Rush Limbaugh came on, and he became very popular, and then the Dems had to put their Air America on and say, well, we're going to go left wing, and the problem was it was boring and stupid, and it was no fun. Rush Limbaugh made politics fun, and to a certain extent, that's what you and I hopefully do because of the fact that the smart stuff you say and the crazy weird crap that I say, right?
I would hope